As promised yesterday, today there is once again the morning update on Bitcoin in the firm. I even said in the live video yesterday, hey, I'm going to leave it for today after we had this pump here. Immediately afterwards, we saw a sell-off, a retest down to this triangle, actually to this bullish pendant, which I also talked about in the video yesterday. I also said on Telegram that I was curious to see what would happen overnight. Hey, and what happened here was truly something else, because there was some real manipulation going on. Long orders and short orders were wiped out here to an extent that's almost hard to imagine. We'll take a closer look at that as well. But we'll also take a look at the fact that finally the trading pot opened at $2,400, and I was very, very glad that I was patient. And also yesterday in the videos, even in the live stream where I said this cluster at 2,400. We even went further down. We'll also analyze iFeaturum in detail later because at this point it doesn't look all that great. But I waited for this cluster so that the pot would open here. Not just the pot, but I also scaled my 100x leverage position. Unfortunately, apparently a bit too much because now my entry is a little higher than I had planned. We're now at 2,053. I wanted to stay below 2,000, but it doesn't really matter. The stop loss is in profit. We really can't lose anything anymore. We'll also take another detailed look at Bitcoin, but for now, let's look at this manipulation move that happened here yesterday. And that was actually, let's pull up the 4-hour chart. At noon, I released an update video where I talked about this in comparison to US tether dominance. And US tether dominance actually looked great overall when we look at the 4-hour charts. We fell below this rising support line, which is still good for now, even if we are going up. That's what I showed in the video yesterday, that we broke downwards, really broke further down. But what happened after that, we'll analyze that in more detail now with Bitcoin. That was actually incredible. What's very good now, US tether dominance, just to keep that in mind, we are still, yes, in the resistance zone. The 4-hour candle will show whether we get this rejection here again or actually make new highs. Because the problem is, where we are now with US tether dominance, if we break through this area to the upside, this very last move, then we actually have a bit of room to move. There was little volatility with up and down movements, but rather that could actually indicate that US tether dominance is starting to rise again. But Bitcoin, unfortunately, Bitcoin doesn't look so great right now either. As we said in yesterday's video, also during the live session, there's still quite a bit of liquidity at 100,000. What happened yesterday? Overnight now, let's put it that way. We had this breakout, which was very good. We didn't manage to close above that last high candle. And then we had this sell-off. People thought, okay, this is a perfect retest. If you look at it on the hourly chart, it would also be a perfect retest. But after this retest, there was no rising price. Instead, we kept falling further. I'm going to zoom in a bit more now so you can see it better. We kept falling further back into the triangle. And of course, that was far from ideal because people thought, okay, that was a fake out here. So here we more or less saw a fake out. But in reality, this new dip back into the triangle was the real fake out. Because afterwards, this candle exploded upwards again. Really, really good. And we even made a higher high, didn't we? A higher high indeed. On the 1-hour chart, we even created a new high. But after that came the massive sell-off. That means normally a retest is, we say, a wonderful thing. We have a breakout, we do a retest, we close a candle somehow above this price range, or rather many people jump in right away. We can go long, huge confirmation. In this case though, it was bullshit. Just straight down and now we're back inside this triangle. But what's not so great now, and we saw this in the video yesterday as well, I said we have a price range here which is exactly where our support area was. This yellow line indicates that where we kept bouncing off. And now let's quickly switch to the 1-hour chart, where you can see very clearly how we kept trying to get above this level. Then we managed to break through and it became a support area, right? Below that, it was resistance, and Bitcoin is actually back in the lower part of that range right now. Maybe. We've just now also tested the bottom of this triangle, right on point as you can see here. Now it's being bought up again. So if this really holds, then that's truly awesome. But we'll see what happens, whether we break below it now. But closing below that, below this price range that has been support all this time, would be far from ideal. Because then we'd have a more short-term bearish signal. But we'll see how things develop from here. Maybe we'll even see it happen in the video. Overall, if we now take a look at the Bitcoin heat map, we have the 3-day chart. We see that 102 at 250 is somewhere up to 101,000. But we're not just looking at the 3-day chart. We're also looking at the weekly candle and the 2-week. So the weekly liquidation heat map and also the 2-week. And we still have a cluster here. And the 100,000 level is still incredibly interesting to me. Just like with Firm, I simply waited for the 2400. Even if we're currently falling further down, we'll analyze that in more detail in a moment. Despite everything, this cluster is super interesting and I'm not taking my eyes off it, and I'll continue to leave my orders placed there. And we'll see that in a moment on the chart when I go in and show you exactly what I mean by that. Here, this cluster is huge. And actually, it even goes up to about 98,800. I'm almost certain that we're going to reach this price range. Of course, you can never say it's guaranteed to happen, but the chances here are very high. So now let's move over to the Bitcoin chart. And as you can see here, yes, the Bitcoin chart. If we now just leave everything out, all the patterns, every other element we have in here, the highs and lows, of course, right here at 100,150, this candle low, that's super interesting. At around 100,000, we're back at this key level, which is exactly this green box I already mentioned yesterday. We are within that. The current advantage is that at this moment, we don't have any CME gap. We manipulated that a bit downward and upward, but when the markets open today, this CME gap is almost non-existent. And that's already very, very good. But what I've seen now, and currently, if we use the Fibonacci, there are two possibilities. The Fibonacci for a bullish reversal. You can see that at this moment, the 0.65 level, we'll have to see whether we just get a wick down there or whether we break through it to the downside. Then 0.786 would be the current level where we could say, hey, we might see a reversal there in a bullish scenario. But we can also pull up this Fibonacci again, bring it in a bit closer. And now it gets more interesting, because if we actually take the last swing low to swing high, take a close look, then at this moment, at 0.786, we have exactly, that was actually hit right on point here as a small reversal opportunity. So you could say I was unfortunately too late. Otherwise, I might have entered a small long position here again, because you can see exactly in this area, we had a support zone, which now also corresponds to these two candles here. I wouldn't be too bearish on Bitcoin just yet. There's a possibility that we might see a potential consolidation phase continue here. But what we also have now, that's maybe not so great, I think, was that on the 1 hour chart. We're forming a small, not very pronounced yet, but still present bearish divergence here. If we now look at these highs that we have and see the rising price, it's not very pronounced yet, but the RSI is actually falling here. And that's something we should pay attention to. How far would this play out if we do see it play out? That's going to be very, very interesting now. And we also talked about this yesterday in the live stream. When could I go short? You can see here in the 1 hour chart, with the new high that was made here, we actually had our divergence. That means, as we discussed yesterday in the live stream, where could I go short? Should I already go short here? But the optimal, yes, because we were still looking for a divergence. And then we saw that the 1 hour chart formed a very, very nice divergence here. And that would, of course, have been the shorting opportunity. But of course, we would have had to sit at the chart all night to follow this. So for us, that was rather suboptimal, so we weren't in on it. Otherwise, we can now actually see Bitcoin recovering at the 0.786 Fibonacci level, as we observed. Now, let's move on to Ethereum to wrap things up. Ethereum is incredibly interesting right now, though not in a particularly positive way. Just a quick update on Ethereum. We'll keep this brief. You can see here this green key level was actually touched precisely to the downside with yesterday's daily candle. We're currently moving further down again, but this 2,400 level here, that's the liquidation level. That was actually hit cleanly, with the wick even going further down. And now I'm curious whether that was already it, or if we might test 2,260 once more. That would actually be roughly this support line we have here, which I also showed yesterday in the live video, the one that's been open for a very, very long time, the extended support line, that we might test it again. That would still be a possibility for me, and we'll keep watching to see what happens. In any case, it was interesting that at least my Ethereum position was picked up here at 2,400. And for Bitcoin, I'm actually still waiting for the 100,000. I still have that open here. But also here, so that if we reach that and hit this liquidation level for Bitcoin at 100,000, we can then have a bullish reversal here. If we now take a quick look at Ethereum on the 4 hour chart, I might not like what I see at the moment, even though we have this level here and also this really, really great zone. That's right here. This is roughly the price range where after this breakout, we had a bit of consolidation before things continued upward. But now we've dipped into it again. However, and this might not be so great right now, but hopefully we'll break through it. We've been seeing a series of higher highs and higher lows here. That was still okay. We haven't made a lower low yet. But you can already see here that the highs have been getting lower, and unfortunately, the candle close was right at this part here. But basically with that candle, we actually formed a lower low. And the candle after that has also already made a lower low. And that could actually mean we might see lower prices for now. Let's see if we find support here, if that was already everything, and we start rising again, or if we actually go further down. Because as you can see here, and it's drawn in very simply, we're actually making a small curve downward right now. And that's not so great because it means we're losing momentum here and the price is going down. Despite all that, I'm still overall bullish, right? We've risen so strongly with Ethereum that I'm just going to wait and see how things develop, because I think the overall bullish momentum in the market isn't over yet. Let's also not forget about Bitcoin. If we look at the weekly chart, the current candle as well. By the way, yesterday we actually closed the last candle, the first time in Bitcoin's history that we've finished a bullish candle at this level on the weekly chart, above 116,000. The highest before was around 104,400. But that was even a bullish hammer candle. And now a correction would actually be healthy, because take a look at this. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullish candles in the weekly chart for Bitcoin. A healthy correction would do a lot of good so that we can actually see new highs. That's the current update. I'll check again this afternoon to see what happens when the markets open. Maybe I'll go live again as well. Like the video, share the video, and see you next time. Bye-bye.